Let's begin with the simple past, because, as the name suggests, it's simple when to use this tense. We use the simple past when the time of reference is finished. How do we know the time of reference is finished? There are three ways. First, we know the time of reference is finished because the speaker clarifies it in the sentence. Let's look at some examples here. Yesterday, I watched The Crown on Netflix. The time of reference, yesterday, is finished. My family and I flew to Mexico last summer. The time of reference, last summer, is finished. This morning, Tom took an exam. The time of reference, this morning, is finished. Note, as you can see, next to this morning, there is an asterisk. This is because we can only use the simple past here if it is now the afternoon or night. We will talk more about this when we get to the present perfect. The second way that we know the time of reference is finished is because the speaker establishes the time of reference is finished, but then perhaps does not state it again. Let's take a look here at this example with this conversation. Javier, what did you do last August? The time of reference is established. Natalia, oh, my boyfriend and I had a great time. Javier, oh, really? Natalia, yeah, we went to Hawaii where the weather was fabulous. We surfed and sunbathed. We ate delicious Hawaiian dishes. And basically, we just relaxed and totally disconnected from our jobs. As you can see, there are 8 verbs used in the simple past in this conversation. You can see those in red. But there's no need to repeat the time of reference, last August, 8 times. The third way we know that the time of reference is finished can be a little trickier. In this third way, the time of reference is not stated at all. It's only supposed and understood. Let's look at some examples. The Beatles recorded 12 studio albums. Shakespeare wrote 38 plays. My grandfather worked in the textile industry. In none of these sentences does the speaker state the time of reference. The speaker assumes the listener knows the context, either because it is something the general population knows, or because it is background information that the speaker and listener share. In this first example, the Beatles recorded 12 studio albums. The general population knows the Beatles were a famous rock band in the 1960s. The general population knows the group broke up in 1970, which is over half a century ago. So, although these time references, the 1960s, 1970, half a century ago, are not explicitly stated, they are understood. The speaker says they recorded because it is a finished action in a finished time. In the second example, Shakespeare wrote 38 plays. The general population knows that William Shakespeare is dead. Here, the time of reference is the writer's life, which is finished. He will not write more plays. Finished time of reference, finished action, hence, simple past. In the third example, my grandfather worked in the textile industry. There are various unspecified reasons the speaker uses the simple past. One possibility is that both the speaker and the listener know the grandfather is retired. Another possibility is that the grandfather is dead. Dead people will not work again. Not usually. Let's move on to the present perfect. We use the present perfect when the time of reference is not finished. How do we know that the time of reference is not finished? Again, there are 3 ways. First, we know that the time of reference is finished because the speaker clarifies it. Let's look at some examples. This week, I have eaten pizza 3 times. The time of reference this week is not finished. Daniel has read a lot this year. The time of reference this year is not finished. In both these sentences, the speaker specifies a time of reference that is not finished and continues to the present. That this time of reference continues to the present is the reason this tense is called the present perfect. Now let's look at one more example with the time of reference stated. This morning, Tom has taken an exam. The time of reference this morning is not finished. Note, you will remember this same sentence from our examples in the simple past. There, the time of reference was finished, and here, the time of reference is not finished. Let's look at the difference. This morning, Tom took an exam. This is said after 12 o'clock, which is noon. After noon. When the morning is finished. Finished time, finished action, simple past. This morning, Tom has taken an exam. This is said before 12 o'clock. The morning is not finished yet. The second way we know that the time of reference is not finished is because the speaker and the listener share that knowledge. In other words, there's no need to state it. Let's look at some examples. Imagine Dragons have recorded 6 studio albums. Stephen King has written 64 novels. In this first example, Imagine Dragons have recorded 6 studio albums. The general population knows that the famous rock band Imagine Dragons is a contemporary group. The general population knows Imagine Dragons still record albums. So here, although their 6 studio albums were recorded in the past, the band's recording life is not finished. It continues to the present. Hence, the present perfect. In the second example, Stephen King has written 64 novels. The general population knows that Stephen King is alive and continues to write. So, again, although the 64 novels are finished, the time of reference, here the writer's life, is not finished and continues to the present. So, present perfect. The third way we know that the time of reference is not finished is because the speaker communicates it to us but doesn't say it. Let's look at some examples here. If a speaker tells us, "My grandfather has worked in the textile industry," that speaker is telling us that although the action, work, is finished, the time of reference, his grandfather's working life, is not finished. Here, the grandfather is still working, just not in the textile industry anymore. Maybe he works in the medical field or with computers. This kind of example is very typical of the present perfect when we talk about life experiences without stating when the action took place. We saw a similar sentence when we were talking about the simple past. Let's look at the difference. My grandfather worked in the textile industry. The time of reference is finished. He is retired or dead. My grandfather has worked in the textile industry. The time of reference is not finished. He still works, but no longer in the textile industry. One final note. When we establish that the time of reference is not finished, and we use the present perfect, if we continue the conversation, we then switch to the simple past. Let's take a look at a conversation where we do that. Kevin, what have you done today? Melanie, oh, I have done a ton of things. I ran 10 kilometers. I painted my bedroom. I studied physics for a couple of hours. I repaired the carburetor in my car. Oh, and I made lunch for 11 friends. Melanie answers correctly using the present perfect. But after that, when she continues the conversation, she switches to the simple past. Okay, that does it for today's lesson on when to use the simple past and when to use the present perfect. Thanks a lot for watching. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.